Today we have India's leading career coach Vikram Anand alongside us. So Vikram, my first question would be, is the job market really down?
The job market is a roller coaster. There are ups and downs across sectors at all points of time. You just need to have a strategy to find your next job.
A lot of working professionals are looking for, they are confused between whether they should work in India or abroad.
You may earn more money abroad, but the cost of living is much higher abroad. When you go abroad, you start from zero. Because you don't understand that economy, you don't understand the society. People don't understand you. Half the time they can't even pronounce your name. You're actually starting from ground zero. So that's a reality that people don't see.
And MBA के बाद आपने I think top companies में काम किया इंडिया की.
So I joined HTA in those days, which is now called J. Walter Thompson. Then I got a call from Lintas. And I joined Lintas. And then after that, I moved into marketing with Johnson & Johnson, with Unilever.
क्या बताओगे कि what is the difference between a junior manager, middle manager, senior manager?
A junior manager will start by thinking about a project. A mid-level manager will start thinking about the impact of the project on the organization. A senior level manager will think about projects which don't exist yet, which can impact the organization even more.
Our resume is still relevant in 2025.
Absolutely. Resumes are very relevant, but the way you look at a resume has changed.
Hi everyone, today we are shooting the first episode of Masterclass by ScaleX. This is a podcast series that ScaleX exclusively brings to you, where we'll interview a lot of coaches, consultants and creators who are renowned in what they do. We'll try to pick their brains and try to get the best of the best information for you in that particular domain. Today we have India's leading career coach Vikram Anand alongside us. He has 30 plus years of experience in the corporate. Over the last 5 years, he has been working as a career coach, helping mid to senior professionals get a better job. So, Vikram, my first question would be, is the job market really down?
The job market is a roller coaster. There are ups and downs across sectors at all points of time. People don't have to worry about whether the job market is up or down because, as we've had a conversation earlier, we are a labor surplus talent deficit market. In every sector, in every field, in every niche, there are ample opportunities. Companies continue to grow, and even companies which have plateaued in growth are constantly looking for talent to grow to the next level. As long as you have the right skills in a country like India, which is a young, vibrant country, I think there are ample opportunities for everyone. You just need to have a strategy to find your next job.
Awesome. I think we'll find a lot of strategies in this podcast.
Well, I'm hoping so, and I'm hoping that we have a really exciting interaction which our viewers can learn from.
Definitely.
Now, Vikram, एक ईयर यहाँ पे 1000 चला गया. कनाडा में आपको आदत होगी अंडर 10 AQI देखने की. क्या डिफरेंस है?
The difference तो है. I mean, there is a fair bit of difference between both the countries, not just in AQI, but in the society, the economies, they're different, people, and both sides have a lot of pros and cons. So this is not to be politically correct, but I just think there's a lot that I miss about India, and there are a lot of things that I look forward to when I go back to Canada, and I think it's been a great move for my children.
I think for our guests, because this is just the start of the podcast, we would like to cover a lot more about you initially.
Sure.
कि लोग आपको बेहतर जाने और उसके बाद हम जाते हैं उन सवालों पे जिसका लोगों को इंतज़ार है. So, आपने MBA करी है?
Huh. I have in way back in prehistoric times, just a dinosaur age. 1992 is when I graduated. So I did my MBA from 1990 to 1992 from Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management Studies in Bombay.
Okay.
We were not born then.
And MBA के बाद आपने I think top companies में काम किया इंडिया की.
So actually it's quite interesting. You know, I graduated out of B school and I thought advertising would be very glamorous. So I joined HTA in those days, which is now called J. Walter Thompson. Okay. And then I got a call from Lintas. And I joined Lintas. It wasn't glamorous advertising. It turned out to be a lot of hard work. So that was my first real exposure to life, that what you see from the outside and what you really experience from the inside are two very different things. So wo kiya, and then after that I moved into marketing with Johnson & Johnson, with Unilever and a couple of other companies. And then I moved up the corporate ladder in marketing.
Nice.
What was advertising like back then?
Very different from what it is now. So back then, if you remember, way back in the 90s, there was only one channel, Doordarshan. And cable came in 1994 with the Gulf War, right? CNN and all of that. So when I started out as a management trainee, there was only Doordarshan, which made life very easy for media planners because they had to do all their planning for one channel. Today, a poor media planner has to do planning across 50, 60 channels. So it was easier times, much, I would say, innocent times of advertising. There were fewer brands. The audience was less sophisticated. All that has changed now. And of course, because there was no digital, computers hadn't come in, their day-to-day. You can imagine, even if you wanted to make a presentation, right, there was no such thing as PowerPoint. We had slides. So, all our trainees in advertising, we would have to make those 35 slides and put this on those projectors. So it was a very different era.
तो advertising में जाना, was it a conscious decision कि आपका interest था, or did it like life happened and?
A bit of both.
Okay.
So I realized that I wasn't great at numbers in that time. I didn't have a liking for finance.
Okay.
So मैंने finance eliminate कर दिया. And then I was thinking between HR and marketing.
अच्छा.
And as things would have it, marketing is interesting because marketing is all about psychology, making a consumer buy or at least more predisposed to your brand. And I found that was a lot of fun. Market research, advertising strategy, and I started gravitating closer to it. So then I left finance behind and started getting attracted towards marketing, brand, etc. So I moved to marketing.
And since when you are in Canada?
इसमें भी इसके पीछे एक कहानी है. We've been in Canada since about a month before COVID.
About a month before COVID.
That's right. So COVID sort of, shut the world down in, I think, about March of 2020. My family and I arrived in Vancouver in February of 2020. So about a month before. So our timing was classic. We arrived there and then the world shut down.
Why did you move to Canada? Like, did you move for a job?
No, actually, I was pretty well settled professionally here. But I've always believed that the best form of education for children is travel. And not just travel for a day or as a tourist, but actually to live in a country for a few months, maybe a few years. So my boys were in their 20s, in their early 20s. And I thought that was the right time to try and experiment because, what's the worst that could happen? You don't like it, come back, right? There's always always a return possible. So there's a sense of adventure in the family to try something new and we just tried it out.
And ये जो sense of adventure है, a lot of working professionals are looking for. Like, they are confused between whether they should work in India or abroad. Even I was confused at some point of time. What do you think? Like, what would your general suggestion be to these people?
See, the grass always looks greener on the other side, right? So if you're sitting in India, you always believe that I'll make a lot of money abroad. I'll work in some fancy MNCs abroad. That is partly true and partly not true. So let me explain that. You may earn more money abroad, but the cost of living is much higher abroad. That's number one. Most professionals in India understand the Indian market very well. Let's assume that you're a junior to mid-level manager with 5 years of experience, 7 years of experience. When you go abroad, you start from zero. You don't understand that economy. You don't understand the society. People don't understand you. Half the time, they can't even pronounce your name. You're actually starting from ground zero. So that's a reality that people don't see. Having said that, I think a few years here and maybe a few years overseas in a market that you have strategically chosen for the right reasons, not because you want to earn tax-free dollars in some countries. That strategic thinking is very important before you jump ship and say, "Mujhe India se bahar jana hai." That's a mistake.
Got it.
What were your initial career phases like? Let's say if you can break it down into 3-4 parts, that this is what the first 5 years looked like, this is the next 5 years.
That's a great question. So that's something I wish, maybe someday I'll write a few notes about it. Personally, and I'll come to this in just a second,
Sure.
Every decade for me has been different. But I can only evaluate it when I look back in life. In my 50s now, when I look back, every decade was different. And when we come to work life, the first 5 to 7 years were a period of trying to do what society wanted me to do, trying to fit in. My batchmates were getting well-paying jobs, so I needed a well-paying job. My batchmates were going to good companies, so I needed a good company. And your sense of self is very directly connected with the brand of the name of the company you're working for. I work in American Express. I work in Unilever. Because at that point of time, you as anybody is a nobody, right? So your sense of self-esteem comes from where you're working.
Right.
And I went through that. So first 5-7 years was that. Learned a lot. Had some very tough bosses who I used to curse under my breath. But later I realized they were some of my best learning grounds. And when I was very raw and quite immature, actually. The next phase is when you move from your 30s to your 40s. That phase is a very interesting phase because you're now managing people. And managing people, as you would know, is a very tough challenge because you can't read everybody's mind, right? And you have to get work done and motivate them. So you develop managerial skills. So for me, that was a period of learning. Learning how to multitask, that was a period of learning because in junior management, you do linear work. Your boss gives you task A, you finish A, then move to B, then C. So in 30, you do all of that. Complexities come in 30s because your projects are more complex. So all that happens. By the time you reach 40s, you start wondering, am I on the right track? Some people who are smarter than me would have figured that out in the 30s. And in the 40s, you start figuring out, am I on the right track? Because I have a runway of maybe 20 years left. Retirement is 60. So I've seen that every few years, there's been now that I look back, every few years has been a very nice period of growth. I may not have wanted to go through that growth at that time.
Got it.
But when I look back, I say, yeah, I was at the right place at the right time. Like somebody said, you don't get what you want, you get what you need.
Right. How did the switch happen from working in corporate to realizing that I can also help working professionals get a better job, get promotions? So how did that switch happen?
I used to, flashback, let's go back into 2013, 2014. I used to teach marketing in some B schools in Gurgaon.
Okay.
And youngsters after the classes would come to me and say, your lectures are fine, but it's very hard finding a job. And that's when I started realizing that, yes, it's actually very hard. What can I do about it? And I had this moment, Prakhar, Amritanshu, I was at that time the chief marketing officer of Cargill. Cargill is in DLF Cyber City, in one of those buildings there. And I remember this vividly one afternoon, maybe it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was in the conference room and I was looking out and I said, in this 1.5 square kilometer of DLF Cyber City, there are at least 75 Fortune 100 companies. And these companies have HR directors who do hiring for a living. So let me go and speak to them and figure out what's it like to find people and how can somebody crack their job. And I didn't know any HR director because I come from marketing. So I made some cold calls and I later on realized the power of cold calling. I must have called about 200 HR directors on the phone. Okay, I got the name through referrals, called 200, cracked the first one when I got online with the HR director of Microsoft. At that time, it was Rohit Thakur. So I spoke to Rohit and said, Rohit, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I want to come across and learn from you and I want you to tell us, how do you hire young talent in Microsoft at the entry level? This is a hobby of mine. So he said, yeah, sure, come. So one fine Saturday, I took my handycam. Nothing as professional as this setup, just a handycam. Saturday, Rohit and I in the Microsoft canteen, office, a cafeteria, whatever you want to call it. So we had a podcast. I can't call it a podcast. In those days, there's no such thing. We had a chat. It was supposed to be half an hour, went on for 2 hours. Because he got passionate about it, we had a conversation. He then put me in touch with other people. So over a span of a year, I ended up having these 1-hour chats with the HR directors of Coke, Pepsi, Microsoft, Amazon, Flipkart, Danone, GE, and many, many others. And I started learning about it, about job search at the entry level, mid-level. I started learning about what do they look for when they're making hiring decisions and what's the state of the job market. So my journey started as a hobby. And then over a period of time, the hobby became an obsession. And then over a period of time, I decided to A, monetize and B, take it as a full-time passion, which I could convert. And then somewhere around 2014, I left Cargill Cargill was very nice at that time. They said, we'll give you a runway of 1 year.
Okay.
So you manage our social media for us while you set up your own practice, coaching or whatever. So that's my
Wow.
pivot, the mid-40s pivot.
You mentioned about having different jobs as strategies for mid, junior, senior level people. We take one step back.
Yeah.
क्या आप बताओगे कि what is the difference between a junior manager, middle manager, senior manager?
It's not the number of years. We always believe that, hey, I have 0 to 5 years or 0 to 7 years of experience. I'm a junior manager. Well, yes, but it's more got to do with your mind, the way you're thinking. I've seen some very solid middle level managers who have over 2 years of experience. Why? Because in the first, even before they started working, they had a strategy, they had a plan, they worked that plan, they had breadth of experience which was so vast, and they were not hesitant to roll up their sleeves and do some dirty work in terms of getting out of the field, getting out of the market, moving out of their comfort zone. Let me give you a specific example. And this is a hindsight from, we all make mistakes in our career. I made many mistakes in mine. I moved from advertising to marketing. Big mistake. I should have done a few years of sales. Okay. Sales gets you out of your comfort zone. And this is now what I encourage any marketer to do. Do not get into marketing unless you've had at least 3 years of hardcore sales experience. Because it's difficult to understand a consumer unless you've actually met a consumer or customer. So that has been, so that is a junior level manager. 0 to 5 years in terms of number of years, but it's the way they think. A junior manager will start by thinking about a project. A middle-level manager will start thinking about the impact of the project on the organization. A senior-level manager will think about projects which don't exist yet, which can impact the organization even more. So that's one, the scale and scope of thinking. The junior manager is only thinking about what I call WIFM, what's in it for me. Okay, I get a salary, I'm doing the project, mera 9 to 5 or 8 to late, whatever, is done and dusted. The middle-level manager is thinking about their long-term career. Not just that I'm 32 or 33, but hey, in my 30s, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? The senior level manager, age 40 and above, is thinking about how does our business, which is the company he or she is working in, how does that expand? How does that grow? So they're thinking, it's all a way people think. They just think differently. And it's not got anything to do with the number of years. The number of years just happen to be running in parallel with the thought process. Likewise, just in the reverse, there are many people who tell me, hey, Vikram, I have 20 years of experience and I'm a senior manager. And when I look at their resume, I say, no, you're a junior manager. You have 5 years of experience multiplied 4 times because in your entire career, you have done the same thing. You haven't grown. You have done the same thing multiple times. You are a junior manager. I can show you 5 people who are far senior to you but much younger than you. So that's the difference.
Mind blowing because I've never thought about this way. कि इतना difference होता है, and I always used to imagine in our conversations it's about the number of years. Well, it's not. मतलब अब हम कह सकते हैं कोई 6 साल के experience बंदा भी senior manager हो सकता है.
Okay, so let me clarify here.
6 साल के experience के साथ.
The expectation is कि if you have 6 years of experience, you will not get a vice president salary, right?
Right.
So, okay, here's one thing. There's a correlation between learning and earning.
Right.
Okay? Earning follows learning. Learning does not follow earning. A lot of people believe I should get X amount in my salary. They forget that, are you deserving of that X amount? Deserving should come first. And that's why people, not only in India, but the younger generation, all over the world have a misplaced sense of entitlement. I want the money. Yeah, sure, you want the money, but are you deserving of it? So that's what I would like to say that, and now I've lost my train of thought.
No worries. You just mentioned about resume. I want to know, are resumes still relevant in 2025?
Absolutely. Resumes are very relevant, but the way you look at a resume has changed. So maybe in our parents' time, a resume was a document 3 or 4 pages long, filled with all the stuff that you have done in your career. No longer. A resume today is a marketing brochure selling you in the job market. So stop thinking about yourself as a job seeker and start thinking about yourself as a personal brand. Because look at it. If you look at job search not from your perspective, which naturally everyone does, and look at it from the perspective of the hiring manager or the HR manager who's seeing hundreds of resumes, hundreds of people at the same time, you have to stand out. And therefore, you have to be a brand in today's very competitive, hyper-competitive market in India, where there's a lot of noise. People are building their brands. You may not be able to see your competition's brand, but a lot of people are building it. So to build that brand, the first point of contact with the hiring manager is your marketing brochure, which is the resume. So resume remains very important. Today, resumes have gone online, so you have a lot of online resumes. And in fact, a lot of HR directors say today that LinkedIn has become your online resume. Many recruiters go and see your LinkedIn profile first before they even read that resume. So is it important? Yes. Is it relevant? Yes. Has it changed? 100%.
And I've seen a lot of people do all different sorts of resumes, like someone printing a menu card to get hired at Zomato. So do you think those tactics work?
When you start creating your resume, it depends on how you're applying for a job. If you're applying for a job online, the resume has to pass through an ATS, an applicant tracking system, where it's more the text and the keywords and the way you made yourself relevant for the job description which matter over anything. So a black and white, no color, 2-page resume is more than sufficient. So let's assume that the ATS accepts your resume and it goes to the hiring manager or the HR manager. Now the HR manager has some 50 resumes to see. Yours has to stand out and excite them. And here's where you have to flirt with the reader. If you reveal everything about yourself, then he or she knows everything about you. They'll take a decision on whether to hire you or not without meeting you. This is where a lot of job seekers make mistakes. The resume is a foot in the door. The main interaction is the job interview. That foot in the door is your visiting card called the resume, where you're flirting with the reader. It's like, think about it like this. The interview is the movie. The resume is the trailer to the movie. If you like the trailer, you'll want to see the movie, right?
Yeah.
If the trailer bombs, or if you are made to watch a 15-minute trailer, you're not going to see the movie.
Right.
So resumes are becoming very interesting now. I've seen some very interesting resumes. I've seen a resume of a lady who's applying for a role of a marketing head in a company. And in her penultimate interview with the head of the business, the managing director, instead of a resume, she took a paper napkin and she wrote the entire marketing plan of the company, which if she were to join as a CMO, what she would do. Okay? It was just a napkin. Like, you go to a restaurant and you have a paper napkin. The entire plan was there. She got the job. Not because of the stunt or the gimmick, but because the content was great, but it was delivered in a different style. So there are many styles to do it. I remember when I was applying for the role at Cargill, and we had the penultimate round with the managing director, the chief operating officer. The competition was very intense. And I knew that I wanted the job. So what I did was, I did a Vox Pop.
What is that?
Vox Pop is Vox Populi, which stands for Voice of the People. So just pulling back a little bit, Cargill is a manufacturer of edible oil. They manufacture brands like Nature Fresh and Gemini. And I knew that there were other very smart marketing directors applying for the same role, so I wanted to stand out. I'm just building forward how resumes have changed. So what I did was, between my previous interview and the final one was the main one, I had a 1-week gap. So I took my phone, and today all phones have great cameras. I went and met the customers, consumers, retailers, trade partners of Cargill. So I went into Kirana stores and I asked the Kirana merchant, what do you think of Cargill? What do you think of Adani, Wilmar's, Fortune brand edible oil? I went and met homemakers. I asked them, which cooking oil do you use? So uski puri kahani I made into a 4-minute video. Okay. Then I went for the interview. Now, here's what happens. In an interview, the person who wins is the person who controls the narrative, the flow. If you are interviewing me and you have my resume and you start asking questions and I'm waiting to answer, you have already won. because you're controlling how the interview will flow, which is very dangerous and not the right thing to do. I need to control it. How do I control it? So this is what happened. We are starting this conversation right at the beginning, the first 4th or 5th minute. I put my hand up and said, hey, you know what? I've got this video which I've shot about what your customers are saying about you, your brand. Would you like to see it? Which managing director would say no? They said, yeah, absolutely. So I opened up my laptop, I showed them a 4-minute video, and suddenly we started talking about the problems and the challenges Cargill was facing. And it moved from becoming a job interview to a discussion amongst peers, where we were talking about solving the problem. I mean, I got the job, but the structure and approach was to pivot myself from a job seeker to a problem solver. So it's not just the resume which is important, it is the mindset with which you go, that the resume is a marketing brochure. You have to control the narrative of the interview, and you have to position yourself as not a job seeker, but as a problem solver.
God, that is extremely insightful. Both the things about the resume and about the approach to interview. Because sometimes I think when people are even given a chance to control the narrative, they don't. I've taken a lot of interviews where if I ask them, do you have any questions? They don't ask anything.
Yeah. There's something very interesting, and it's called the memorability effect. Think in your mind, assume there's an x-axis and a y-axis. The x-axis is the axis of time from the beginning of the interview till the end of the interview. The y-axis is how memorable you are in the interview. Okay, it starts off pretty high, it then dips, and then it goes up again. So it's like an inverted parabola. When you walk in, your body language will determine how memorable you are even before you open your mouth and speak. Body language says a lot. Many years back, there was a professor, Albert Morabian, who said that 7% of communication is words, 38% is tonality, and 55% is body language. So that's the first part. Then no matter how brilliant your interview is, the memorability or your memorability with the interviewer will start dipping because his mind starts wandering. Look, all interviews are human beings at the end of the day. Okay? Let's assume that Prakhar is interviewing and he's interviewing me for a job and I'm sitting talking. But after a while, he'll start wondering about, I have a meeting with Amritanshu later. I have some board meeting here. I have to do this, that. You have to pull them back into the conversation. And right at the end, this is an opportunity which most job seekers miss, is when the interviewer says, do you have any questions for us? It's $1 million opportunity, because on a platter, you're being handed the opportunity of controlling the narrative.
Exactly.
And most job seekers will say, yeah, I do. Tell me more about the job. And I hold my head and say, oh my God, you're supposed to know about the job. And you're asking me. So there are a series of questions which you can ask, and I do teach that to my students, to make the interview a little uncomfortable, to put them on the backstage, say, who's this person?
Yeah.
So, but that requires what I call the lion's mode, to be able to challenge the interview. But then you become very memorable.
Got it. Can we take a step back? We have talked about resumes, interviews on and off. But let's say strategic job search किसी को करनी है. So what are the 4-5 steps that they have to go through? Like, let's say I decided today that I want to get a new job. What's next for me in the next 2-3 months?
The why is more important than the what and the how. Why do you want a new job? 99% of people think about a new job when they hate their boss. They think their boss is a jerk. They're fed up of a dead-end job. They think they're stuck in their salary and other people are earning higher than them. These are all the wrong reasons to start thinking about a job, because then it's a knee-jerk reaction. You take the first job that comes your way. Typically, when you are in that state of mind, you start going for a job search. You'll get rejected in 1,000 places. Then one company will make you an offer and you feel like, oh my God, this is the best thing that's happened. Let me join the job. So step back and plan your career. You should have a 1-year, 3-year and a 5-year plan, which you have developed yourself, not from the perspective of the company is developing their annual plan for you. I'm not talking about that. Where do you want to be? Then if you get opportunities, you can map them and see, do they fit your first year plan? Most people don't put in that. Preparing a career plan requires mental rigor. It requires you to be able to put a mirror to yourself and say, these are the areas I failed in, these are the areas I've done well, and this is my personality, and this is where I think I will be best suited. If you can do that in your first 1 or 2 years, I think your career will take off. And that's how you have winners sometimes who are at the right place at the right time. So prepare your career plan. Then you can apply online, but applying online for jobs is the easy way and the lazy way and the least effective way of finding a job, because the level of competition is very high. Many, many years back, there's a pretty well-known portal we all use even today, which would tell you the number of people applying for the job on that portal. And you would see for great jobs, there would be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 3,500 applicants. Now, this is where people don't stop and do the math. So let me take a specific job. There was this job at a top-notch media house in Bombay, international MNC. There were 3,637 applicants for that role in 1 week. Obviously, out of 3,637 applicants, 4 or 5 people will be called for the interview.
Yeah.
One person will get that job. Now, if you take out your calculator and divide 1 by 3,637, the number of people, the percentage is 0.03%. That's too low. So what you're doing is you're spending time applying for hundreds of jobs. And the probability is less than 0.1%, not even 1%. So in addition to that, everybody should learn the art of networking. Networking with the right people who can open doors. And there are many blueprints and many strategies for networking, targeting the right industry, the right companies. Networking requires effort, but the payoff is very, very high because most people don't network.
Right.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, before I hand it over to you, is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And that's why networking is so much more powerful than online applications. So when you network with somebody and they get to know you and you build a credit balance with them, they start liking you enough to make you an offer.
So उन्होंने करियर प्लान किया, नेटवर्क किया, उसके बाद क्या करना चाहिए?
Okay. When you're networking, you should be in the mindset of giving before getting, giving before asking. So what do most people do when they go to a recruiter? Sir, here is my resume. I want a job. So how do you differentiate yourself from the competition? Build equity, build credibility online on LinkedIn even before you meet a recruiter. So for example, be specific. Let's assume that both of you are recruiters. You don't know each other and you're online and you're looking for a marketing director. Because I've come from the world of marketing, I'm taking that as example.
Yeah.
My LinkedIn profile should position me as a marketing director or somebody who's very well known in marketing. Suppose you're a junior software developer. Your LinkedIn profile posts should be full of your passion about software development. If I come to your profile and see कि कुछ नहीं है उसमें, then what separates you from Ram and Shyam and the other person when you're like everybody else? But there are people who spend a lot of time and effort building their LinkedIn profile, where they're building their brand, they're connecting with influencers. So let's just pull back. Career plan, networking with the right people, establishing credibility and rapport, and then asking for a job or asking for an opportunity. And the way you ask for an opportunity is very important. So don't say, I need a job. You need a job, right? So what's in it for me as a hiring manager? I don't care.
Right.
HR managers, hiring managers don't care about you or me as job seekers. A better way to rephrase that is, how can I contribute to the growth opportunities in your company?
Yeah.
But then you're showing that I want to help you. I, as the job seeker, want to help you. So it comes back to the way you look at job search, not from your perspective, but from the perspective of the hiring manager. And if you can do that, you can crack any job. Someone very wisely said, there is a war for talent in India. We are a labor surplus, talent deficit market, which means for every job, there are lots of people applying, but the number of really good people applying is pretty limited.
And do you think this will change?
No, because we are a very young nation. The base is extremely large. My hypothesis for the future is that while the Indian economy will grow with AI coming in, there's going to be a significant churn in the types of jobs which will remain. There've been a lot of negative reports about 300 million jobs going to be going to vanish, 10 million jobs. Some numbers have been given. That's one side of the picture. So while a lot of jobs will go, there'll be a lot of new types of jobs which will come in.
Yeah.
Everybody will have to reskill themselves across the board, not just entry-level people who are looking at AI, but even senior directors, CXOs. If you don't have a grasp of how AI can help you in your job, you can kiss your job goodbye. There are already media reports about how a CEO's job may be replaceable with AI. Okay, so that's the conversation that's happening. So I think India is at a point of inflection where we have a large base of young people. There's some level of frustration in not being able to crack jobs, and that can be overcome through good presentation skills. You need a good command of communication, not the English language. There's a big difference.
Right.
As long as you can communicate your thoughts, convince the other person up to your point of view, whether it's in English or Hindi or any regional language, if you're good at your work, you will do very well in life. But communication skills are extremely important, and being good at your work.
I think someone excellent with average communication versus someone even a bit more average in the skills, but great communication, the latter I have seen generally progressing faster.
100%.
And whatever you mentioned in the last 10-15 minutes, I think if someone just does those 3-4 things, they will probably be in the first, like the top 1 or 5% just by doing that. Because I've taken so many interviews, and whatever you've told so far, there are like 1 in 50 people doing that.
Because we see the easy and lazy way, which is it's very natural. You go to a job portal today. Let's say I'm searching for a job. I see these low units on the dashboard. This company is in a job, that company's job, and we get excited. You start applying. What you're not seeing is, well, there are thousands of people like me sitting in the comfort of their living room, applying for the same job. You can't see them, but they exist. And we don't differentiate ourselves.
Yeah.
So the applications you get will probably be very similar to each other. And you struggle to figure out how do you differentiate one over the other. And that's where candidates now have to be a little alert. Because we're already seeing the application of AI in initial video screening. There are video-based platforms today which will allow you to use AI to screen candidates at the initial level. So if you are in any front-facing role, customer service role, sales role, marketing role, these platforms will enable thousands of applications to be narrowed down to 10 or 20 for the HR manager to view.
Right. In fact, I checked out the application link that you had sent in one email because I wanted to go through that process.
Yes.
Entire 6-7 steps, all were video-based answers.
Yes.
In fact, when we were also hiring, one step we had put in was, while this is optional, do send us a 2-minute Loom video of you explaining why you are right fit for the role. And that itself used to, it used to filter out people who have taken that effort to record it. Second, it used to be very easy for us to check their communication skills or what kind of value they are going to add. So communication point is spot on.
Because at the end of the day, and this I see with a lot of people in IT, people believe I'm an IT engineer, data scientist, whatever. As long as I do my work well, I'll do well. No. You are in the corporate sector, you're interacting with people. You have to sell your point across. You have to convince the other person to what you want. If you have career goals, other people have to be aligned to your point of view. If you want to become a leader, a lot of your team members will not align to your point of view. So you have to convince them. All of that is communication.
Right.
It's not just domain skills. Now, there's a flip side to it. Being a smooth talker is not what I'm talking about. You can't be fluff, right? There are a lot of people, unfortunately, also in the world of marketing who are very smooth talkers. But look, at the end of the day, the person on the other side is not an idiot. If you're sensible and if you have high IQ and EQ, you can figure out whether the other person is genuine or a fake. So, substance with good communication skills will take you light years ahead of your competition.
Got it. Now, we have discussed job search in detail. A lot of people won't know कि job search खत्म होने के बाद, job लगने के बाद भी there are certain steps that you need to be mindful about. This I've learned in the last 2 years interacting with Vikram. So Vikram, what are the top 3-4 things you have to keep in mind when you get in your first role or the new job that you wanted to have? and you enter the office, like वहाँ से क्या होता है in the next 3 to 6 months आपको क्या करना चाहिए, क्या नहीं करना चाहिए?
देखिए, first is you have to realize that when you get a job, your honeymoon period doesn't start. Okay, you're under a microscope. Even if you are a fresher, junior manager, mid-level manager, because the organization is taking a bet on you and they don't know you at all. That's why they have a probation period. So what is a probation period? It's a period where the organization is saying, we'll pay you a salary or a stipend or whatever. We're taking a bet on you. We want to see how you perform. People don't understand that. They assume that I've joined a company. My first few weeks I can chill, relax, do my own stuff and learn. You're not paid on a single day, you're not paid a rupee to learn on the job. You're paid to perform on the job. So your performance appraisal starts on day one. In fact, it starts actually even before day one. I'll give you an example. This was, I joined Max New York Life in 2002. So in 2002, I was moving from Nokia to Max Life Insurance. And at that time, I had a new boss in the new company. And before I joined, I called him up saying that, hey, so-and-so, I would, is there anything you want me to do before I join? And he said, yes. He said, we are developing a new advertising campaign since you're going to be helping us in marketing. Why don't you come across in the evenings and work on the project? I said, fine. So with permission from my current boss in Nokia, at the end of each working day for 2 weeks, I would go to that company, meet the people. So I established rapport even before I joined the company. Okay, so then the impression you create in the first 90 days is very, very important, because after that, that impression cannot be broken.
Right.
You can either create a very solid impression, and then you can ride on that equity for a full year, 2 years. And if it's a bad impression, it's very difficult to get out of that. So what do? Let me give you 3 steps. There are many steps, but let's give 3 very specific steps. One is, you should be like a duck. Why? Paddle furiously underwater, learn a lot, apply a lot, but on the surface, be very calm and in control. You should be like a person that people want to come to in times of crisis or panic, or if they need extra hands on deck. Second is, start showing initiative in small projects, or start them in your first month itself. They could be micro projects, but the impression people should have is, hey, this guy is a deliverer. Ye kuch karta hai. He's not, riding on the company's, party, so to speak.
Right.
And the third thing is, find out in the company who are the influencers and who are the power centers. Every company, be it small or large, has influencers and power centers. So who's a power center? The power center is the guy or the gal, the lady or the guy who calls the shots in the organization, and it may not be the MD. It could be the chief operating officer. It may not be the chief operating officer. It could be the head of finance. First, figure out who they are, because your career depends on them. It may not depend on your boss. Next is, figure out what is the equation your boss has with the power center. Because your boss has the maximum impact on your happiness and lack of it, or success and lack of it. And you have to align with your boss. And I'm not talking about chamchagiri, ass-licking, brown-nosing, no. But you have to show that you're fully aligned in your boss's corner and you're going to help them succeed. Because if you don't do that, your career is not going anywhere. Now, some people say, that's not fair. I work so hard. I work from 8 to late, etc. Look, in the real world in offices is about people. And people have imperfections. Your boss is more insecure than you are because he or she has many more responsibilities and managing more, earning a higher salary, but is on a very slippery slope. So just to wrap up, summarize 3 things. When you join, understand that you are under a microscope. Your new boss is figuring out, did I do the right thing hiring you? So performance from day one. Second is to make sure that you start delivering almost immediately, micro projects. Third is understand the ecosystem, the political ecosystem you have joined. Even if you're a junior manager, is your boss secure, insecure? What is his relationship with his super boss? Who are the power centers? If you know all of this, you'll do very well.
Got it.
I always remember those people who do like a self-assessment. कि मैंने इसमें ये किया है. what do you think about my work, and what do you think I can take up, or what do you think I can do better. So it at least shows that learning intent, that guy is there asking questions and wants to learn more. So those people are like very memorable, and in fact they do better because आप वेट नहीं करते हो कि कोई प्रॉब्लम आएगी तो आप फीडबैक दे रहे हो.
Correct.
तो दे आर देमसेल्व्स आस्किंग कि मेरा काम असेस करो, दिस इज व्हाट आई डिड दिस मंथ.
It's a part of my training when I talk about the first 90 days. At the end of the 90 days, even before you are asked for an assessment, you should actually do an assessment and call your new hiring manager, a senior HR manager, and say, these have been my wins and these have been my misses as I see them. Now you tell me what I should do better. And do this 30 days or even preferably 60 days before, 30 days before your probation period is over. So you can correct the misconceptions.
Right.
Because isme ye hoga, there will be miscommunication and misconception between the boss and you. Oh, she's got hazard things to do. You're one amongst many people. For you, your boss is like larger than life because your success is linked. So there's a mismatch.
Yeah.
So if you can do your performance appraisal yourself, see, once your boss realizes, right, that this guy's a star or this girl is a star, it's very difficult to change it. And rightly so. You work towards it.
Yeah. Amritanshu was asking the next question.
Yeah.
हाँ, I was asking कि मतलब जॉब लग गई भाई मेरी. I've been in the organization for 2 years now. Now मेरे को appraisal भी चाहिए होगा after a point of time. A lot of people have doubts कि how to ask for an appraisal, what is the right way, when to ask for an appraisal. A lot of questions and no structured information or answers. So if you want to throw some light on it.
Yeah. You are responsible for your career. HR is not. You are responsible. The hiring manager or your boss is not responsible for your career. So the first thing is take full responsibility and onus on where you are today. My advice to job seekers, to corporate professionals is stop blaming your team, your peers, your former bosses, how bad they were, toxic they were. People say that I worked in a toxic workplace. You chose to work in a toxic workplace. You can always move out from the next day. When you take responsibility of where you are, it's a very empowering and a freeing state to be in. Because you've said, now I'm responsible. I can't blame anybody else. Step one. Second is when it comes to appraisals, do a self-appraisal every 30 days initially when you're in a new company. And the appraisal is two parts. Appraisal of yourself. The other is, am I in the right company? Because every company has an ethos, every company has a culture. Some companies are hyper aggressive. They're run by type A personalities, and type A people will do very well there. Some companies are very collaborative in nature. Everything happens by consensus. You need to be a type of that person. So when you are assessing yourself, which is the right thing to do, which people don't do because you have to ask yourself very hard questions, do that. And also assess, am I a right fit or am I a square peg in a round hole and I'm going to be miserable here? The company may have paid you a 75% salary hike. But once that 75% goes into the bank every month, after 3 months, you don't even see the money, right? Because it's gone to the bank. But you're coming every Monday morning to a job you hate because you are a misfit. That's a bad thing. So appraisals should not be at the end of 6 months or at the end of 1 year. They need to happen every month. It could be an informal one. But are you learning? Are you contributing? In fact, are you contributing is probably more important than anything else here. Because the moment you feel you have stopped contributing, you need to get back on the saddle of contributing. Companies are watching. Today, the patience a company has for junior managers to learn and then contribute has dramatically reduced because, for companies, competition is hyper intense. And therefore, they want people to hit the ground running and start doing some micro contributions immediately. So, when it comes to appraisals, make sure that you take stock of yourself, you take stock of where you are in the company, take stock of, are you in the right kind of company? And I think, don't wait for the boss to do your appraisal.
I think this is a very different perspective. I've never thought about it like this. Because for me, appraisal was something equivalent to an increment. So if you can tell the audience what is the actual difference between an increment and an appraisal.
There are two cycles which work in a company, which work for an employee. There is your performance cycle and there's your increment cycle. And there is a 6-month gap or a lag between two of them, which people don't see. People say, okay, I got my performance appraisal in, let's say we are in December. So many companies are doing December performance appraisals. I got my appraisal and I got a salary hike of 10%.
Okay.
Okay? Wrong. Your appraisal happens now. Your salary hike was decided in your boss's mind 6 months back. Right? And they use the appraisal to justify the salary hike. When your boss is evaluating you today, they're also saying, are you promotable to the next level?
Yeah.
And the appraisal is used to justify a decision made many, many months earlier on what is your level of, there's something called the Peter principle, your level of incompetence, which means you'll rise to the level of as competent as you can be, and then you will stop there. That's why, at the CXO level, many people have hit the level of incompetence and they stop rising. So just coming back here, when it comes to salaries and appraisals, one is a symptom, the other is a cause. The symptom is I got a salary of 10%. The cause was your performance, but not of the performance appraisal, but what you have done 6 months prior. And एक बारी आपके boss के mind में बैठ गया कि this person is a average performer, needs about a 5% salary hike. Then, unless you reset that by proactively asking for feedback, making changes. So I'll tell you what very smart guys do. Very smart guys know that my appraisal is happening in December. In October, they will ask their boss for an assessment. Okay? Boss, I just want some advice. Can you give me what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And they're normally shocked to find that their boss's perception of what they were supposed to do is different from what they're doing. Because miscommunication, not enough feedback. And then they have October, November, December to correct it. So by the time the formal appraisal comes, they've made some corrections. But overall, there's a 6-month gap between when you're paid and the assessment of that. So your performance appraisal is being used to justify the appraisal, but the measure of the appraisal happened a long time ago.
And you mentioned about feedback while doing this. So feedback एक ऐसा word है, a lot of people who are just starting off their career, they're afraid of it, like asking for feedback, taking feedback. So can you give like 2-3 examples of how you can take feedbacks more consciously? Start improving based on those feedbacks, and what should be the feedback cycle like if you are in the early phases of your career?
I don't know who said this, but someone said this really well. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. If you want to be a champion in life, not just work, get as much feedback, develop a thick bulletproof skin, don't be sensitive. जो भी feedback आ रहा ना उसको आने दो. Then have the emotional maturity to separate your personal attack from your professional weaknesses and start doing this. There is no such thing as too much of feedback. That's why when you and I meet, I've been asking you for feedback about me as a client or you, and I give you feedback from time to time because I think feedback is very important. Don't be embarrassed if you get negative feedback, because 9 times out of 10 that feedback is not about you as a person, it's about where you are weak. At the junior levels, we tend to muddy things up. We take the negative feedback very personally.
Yeah.
Right. Which is natural because we haven't matured enough. But as you mature, you have to separate the two and say, personal ko side mein rakho. Abhi, these are the negative things that my boss or my peers are telling me. And I've seen some people do some really interesting stuff. They do anonymous 180-degree feedback. Use a Google form. I tell all my students once in a quarter, send out a form to all your peers saying that I'm just doing a anonymous feedback. Can you tell me a little bit about what am I doing right that I should do more of? What am I doing wrong that I should stop doing? And anything new that I should do. And that will give you enough content to be able to improve. You should aim for progress and not perfection. If you can progress incrementally every month or every quarter, you're on a good track. And the only competition you have is with yourself. It should not be with other people because they have their own weaknesses. So that feedback should be, how can I become incrementally better versus can I get a higher salary hike? So this earning will follow learning, not the other way around.
Got it.
I've never worked in a corporate setup, but one thing that I've always heard about is office politics. What exactly is it? How can an organization avoid it? And as someone working in the company, how you can navigate through office politics?
Every coin has two sides. You would agree? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Office politics and career management are two sides of the same coin. If you think about it, what is career management? Career management is how can I ethically, in a nice way, get what I want? Rise up the corporate ladder, get the corner office, get my salary hike of X percentage. In a nice way. Office politics is exactly that, but by stamping on other people's careers, stabbing them on the back to get what I want. The goal is the same. In any environment, not only office politics, where there are three human beings, there is politics. And politics, unfortunately, has got a negative connotation. And if you ask any person, including those who play office politics, they'll tell you, I hate office politics. Toxic, man. And half the time, they're doing it in themselves. So office politics is here to stay. You cannot say, I hate office politics, I'll do my work and go home. Good for you, then you'll remain exactly where you are. You have to navigate, not manipulate, but you have to navigate office politics. You should not become a victim to it. So there are only two options when it comes to office. Okay, let's pull back. Office politics will always remain. There are only two options. Either you learn to navigate it or you become a victim to it. There's no third option. If you become a victim to it, your career will stall very, very fast. If you navigate it, you will know who are the movers and shakers, and you will know who to avoid, who are the toxic people, and how to push them back. You can latch on to people who are rising faster than you because a rising tide lifts all boats. I have seen, without exception, every single super boss of mine in all the companies I've worked in who reached the level of head of department and above was a brilliant master strategist in office politics. There's no other way to survive, especially in multinational companies, where you're not only competing with people in India, but also with your peers in other societies, other countries. Both politics are here. Yeah. So office politics is here to stay. Office politics should be managed. Don't try to avoid it. And it's the opposite side of career management. Everybody wants to manage their career, so please learn how to avoid office politics.
Right.
So we have done a lot of discussion till now, and I have a few good questions from people which I want to ask you. First question would be, is LinkedIn still relevant as a job search portal?
Yes, but not the way people think about LinkedIn. You see, a lot of people equate it to another job portal, like many of the others out there in the market. LinkedIn does have a job portal section in it, but it's much more than that. It's a place where professionals come and network with each other. So LinkedIn is very important for you if you learn how to network on LinkedIn. Now, that's something that most people don't do. What do most professionals do? They open up their LinkedIn profile and see how many people have looked at their profile yesterday. Right? That's it. That's what most people do.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Very few people actually comment on other people's posts, and even fewer write posts. There is a saying that 90% of people on LinkedIn are called lurkers. Lurkers are, this is a negative term, but it's not really negative. 90% of people come on LinkedIn, they just look at content, they don't engage. I would say about 9%, outside the 90%, 9% will comment on other people's posts, and only 1% will actually write content. And they build their brand very fast. LinkedIn is an awesome opportunity to build your brand with the right targeted people because it's a place for professionals by professionals. But it should not be looked as a job portal. Also, there have been some malpractices in the past where people have been misusing LinkedIn and making it into an Instagram or a Facebook with those kind of content.
Yeah.
Right? But the LinkedIn algorithm is always evolving, and something that people should know is in June 2023, LinkedIn changed the way the algorithm is now ranking posts, which means it's looking for high quality engagement, not for viral content. And there's a big difference. So YouTube, Insta, and some of the other social platforms look for viral content. LinkedIn is saying we are in the opposite direction. We're looking for high quality engagement. Now, ultimately, for both types of platforms, because they're social media, they have only one aim. Their aim is, can we keep you on the platform? but only then they can serve ads to you.
Correct.
To keep you on the platform, either you should have spammy, low quality, viral content like kittens and all that kind of stuff we see, and babies pictures we see on some platforms, or you can have very high quality discussions and engagement, which is what LinkedIn is intended to be. Now, just because a handful of people don't use it that way doesn't mean LinkedIn is bad. It's a tool at the end of the day. How you use the tool is what is going to determine whether you're going to get a benefit of it. Every professional, whether you're searching for a job or not, as long as you're looking at building your career, should be building their brand on LinkedIn, plain and simple. There are many ways to do it. You don't even have to write content. You can engage with content creators in your niche, in your category, whichever field you belong to. Identify the top 10 influencers in that category. Out of 10, at least 2 or 3 will be content creators. Engage with them. You will start opening doors. पर कोई करता नहीं है.
Right. आपने बोला brand की बात. So can a person be a brand? And if yes, how to become a brand?
All of us, whether we know it or not, are a brand. Now, some of us have a high brand visibility. Some of us have zero brand visibility. We are like aloo, piyaz, tomato in the marketplace, in the job marketplace. Many of us are like that. We believe our work can speak for itself, but it cannot. Yes, everybody can be a brand. You should be a brand. And the way to think about yourself as a brand is to think about a lighthouse. The foundation of the lighthouse is the skills, the experience, and the talent that you bring to the table. The tower of the lighthouse is your personal branding strategy. What do you want to stand for? If people think about Amritanshu, what's the thing that should come in their mind? If they think about Prakhar, what's the thing they should come in their mind? And the beam of light are the messages that you put out there in the marketplace about how you want to be positioned. So there's a science and art of branding. And by the way, personal branding and image consulting are two very different things. Image consulting is a subset of personal branding, but personal branding is very important and very widely used in the West. And it's come a long way even in India. And I'm beginning to see, I'm quite happy to see a lot of CXOs, people wanting to become CXOs now, but investing in building their brand. And by the way, also at junior levels, let's talk about a fresher. Do not assume that personal branding is only for senior people.
Yeah.
When you come out of B school or engineering colleges, you are like everybody else. You're a cookie cutter. Every engineering institute generates hundreds, if not thousands of people like you. How do you stand out? You can. There are many free tools in branding available where you can build your brand. And when you start young, your runway is very, very long as compared to somebody in their 40s who's starting to build their brand, because personal branding takes years, not months. And you should build your brand when you don't need a job, because you can really, invest in building the brand so that by the time you need a job, people will be scouting for you rather than you having to chase jobs.
I've heard a lot of people say this, the right time to start job search is when you're actually not looking for the job. So do you believe in this?
Yes, I do. So some years back, I'll give you an example. In Gurgaon, there was an automobile company which was packing up. It was wrapping up its business in India. And they were shutting down one division. Now in that division, there were 4 people, 3 of whom did not build their brand and 1 person did, and he was in middle management. The people who did not build their brand, 1 person tried to search for a job through job portals, took him many, many months. Another person used recruiters, took her many, many months. 1 person decided that he was too embarrassed to be searching for a job, so he became a consultant and faded away. The 4th person had built his brand in that space of automobile engineering for years because he was passionate about it. He had his YouTube channel, he had his blog, he was invited for conferences. So when the industry realized that this person was going to be out of a job because the company was shutting down, guess what? He had 3 offers. He did not even have to update his resume. And he told me, Vikram, I'm shocked. On one day, in 1 week, the company told us that we are shutting down in the India operations. And he said, by the end of the week, I had 3 offers. So building your brand when you don't need a job is the smartest strategy of all.
Agreed.
At ScaleX, we recently onboarded one brand, and the specific problem that they solve is to help women grow in their career. Now, I know that women face a lot of problems, but that is when I realized the magnitude of it. So, what do you think on this? What kind of problems do women face, and how can they navigate through this in their workspace?
I think first we need to recognize gender bias.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not, there is a significant gender bias, not just in India, but across countries, across societies, it exists. So call a spade and say gender bias exists. When ladies take a break from their career to raise a family, and that itself is a huge job and a rather thankless, unpaid job. When they try to come back, they become what I call high-risk candidates for the HR manager. Because even if the HR manager is not biased against them, they're trying to evaluate this lady has been out of the job market for 2 years, 3 years. Does she still have relevant transferable skills which are applicable in today's market? And most HR managers, if you can convince them that you're at the cutting edge of your field, they'll be more than happy to take you back. Women, when they come back into the job market, normally have not updated their skill set. Because they were so busy raising a family, they try to come back straight with skills which are 3 years or 5 years or 7 years old. And then they face a challenge. Because think about the mindset of the HR manager, okay, for a moment. Now, let's not think about the woman, let's think about the HR manager. He or she has to constantly justify their existence in the company because HR is a cost center. It's not a profit center. It's spending money, salary on behalf of the company to hire talent. So at every point of time, the HR manager is answerable to the hiring manager. You better get me good talent or else. So the HR manager is very risk averse and will try to get the best talent at the lowest possible cost and someone who's not likely to leave the company, safe talent. So when they get resumes of 2 people, a lady who's taken a 3-year break to raise kids and has not upskilled herself, versus another lady or a gent, whatever the gender may be, who's remained in the workforce, who are they more likely to go towards? The latter.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's happening. So it's not a sexist or a gender bias in that sense. It's just that HR managers want to play very safe. And in playing safe, as long as the woman makes herself positions herself as having relevant transferable skills which can be immediately applied, she'll have no problem. Because women bring a certain sense of intuition, talent, a way of thinking that men just don't have. And a healthy combination of the two, especially at senior leadership and even mid leadership levels, is very valuable for a company. Any sensible CEO should try to get a 50% mix if possible.
Nice.
Got it.
How much power, or I would say, in your appraisals or in general, like in your career growth, what's the distribution of, let's say, the power between your immediate manager, their managers versus the HR? Because again, this question is coming because I have never worked in corporate.
The hiring manager, your current boss, has the maximum impact on your appraisal, on your salary hike, because it's his neck on the block to get work done through you.
Yeah.
Okay, now typically what happens is HR will give the hiring manager a certain overall budget. Let's assume the budget is 50 lakhs. And the hiring manager has 5 subordinates. He can play around with the numbers. He can give someone less, someone more, etc. That leeway is with him.
Okay.
And then it's a question of, as we go back to the earlier topic of office politics, first impressions, are you batting from the same corner as the boss? Does he feel that you're on his side of the ring? All these start making a difference. Because we are human beings at the end of the day. Very insecure human beings. So all this matters. And I think the hiring manager has a much larger role than HR. HR is a facilitator.
Right.
If the HR wants to give a 5% hike and the hiring manager says, no, give 10%. HR will say, as long as it's within your budget, I don't care.
Right. Another reason to ask this was recently I was talking to a friend. I often go to him if I have any queries on HR. He scaled a company called TerraPay from about 200 people to around 1,600 people. So he's the CHRO there. And I met him when ScaleX was at 25 people. So recently, last week, I was having a conversation with him, and he asked me, like, how's the HR thing going? I told him I just have HR executives. I still don't have an HR manager at ScaleX. And I've always been thinking that we need to get someone in place, but he gave me a very different perspective. that what you're doing is actually great, because HRs are just facilitators. So because HRs are just facilitators, as you said. So if you're able to run a company without, let's say, an HR, which ideally wouldn't happen, but if your managers are capable enough to give feedback, if they are the ones driving the probation cycles, the feedback cycles, the appraisal cycles, and there is nothing better than that. So just thought of sharing that.
It's a valid observation. In the ideal situation, in every management committee meeting where the MD is interacting with his direct reportees, the heads of department, where business strategy is being discussed, HR should be there. Normally, HR is not there. HR is perceived as being a facilitator,
Right.
hiring. They almost become glorified talent acquisition managers, because MDs don't have an appreciation of what does HR do. Does HR hire people? Yes. Do they pay them? Yes. और क्या करते हैं? The flip side is many HR managers don't take the pain to understand the business very well. If you were to talk to 10 heads of HR of multinationals today, barely 3 of them would know how the pulse of the business. But if you talk to 10 CFOs, all 10 will know how the business functions, because money is the pulse of a business.
Right.
Which also explains why many CFOs become heads of the company or the CEO. You'll rarely find a head of HR becoming the head of the company, which is in a way strange, because companies are made of people. So why can't an HR manager become head of a company? It's made of people. They don't, because they don't understand the business. They take the easy way of just remaining in their domain, not realizing that unless you understand the pulse of the business, how are you going to rise?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So if you are in the HR domain, it's very important for you to understand what the business actually does, how it does it.
I tell my students, to build up on your point, no matter which field you are in, even if you're back-end IT computing, when you join your new job, with your boss's permission, go and meet customers and consumers of that company, because they're paying your salary. The company is paying your salary, but the company is paid by your customers and consumers. Understand how they view your company. And it's not just the sales department's role. They have to do that. But imagine if, for example, I'm reporting into you, Amritanshu, and you're the head of IT, and I'm a software developer or a business analyst, and I say, do you mind if I go along with the salespeople and go for customer visits for 1 week to understand the company? You're not going to say no. Yeah, you're going to say, oh my God, this is an interesting guy. Yeah, he wants to visit customers. Now see what I've done? I made myself different. So these are signals.
Right.
Whether you like it or not, in office or at work, in a small company or a large company, you're always giving out signals. You only stop giving out signals when you leave the company, or when you go to sleep at night. You're giving out signals to your spouse, to your significant other. You have to monitor those signals.
And just to add to that, I think a few companies that I really admire, I found out that they make it mandatory for you to act on do the role of a salesperson or a customer support role for a week or so. In an year, for a week, you have to be at the role of a customer support person, no matter what role you're at.
Yes. And I think that should be done at least once a year for everybody, in those companies for sure, and in any company.
Right.
It's too easy to go into a silo in an air-conditioned office, in some remote head office, and not realize what are the problems your customers facing. Especially in service industry, it should be made mandatory. You should have no right to work in a company in the service industry unless you have dealt with clients or customers or consumers or trade partners or vendors. They are your bread and butter. They bring in the money.
Right.
And nobody else does.
Makes sense.
That even if you don't ever deal with them on a day-to-day basis, a few conversations will open up windows in your mind which will never shut again.
We just touched 150 people and the entire company is remote. What are your thoughts on remote work?
Firstly, congratulations to both of you. I think 150 is completely boof. It blows my mind. There are very few companies which can successfully scale the way ScaleX has scaled. That's 3 scales in one sentence. The way you have done it, I think very, very commendable to all the founders. When a company goes from point A to point B to point C to point D, you as founders have to reinvent yourself because the dynamics of the game are changing so fast.
Right.
that everybody is reinventing themselves. The way you managed a 20-member team and a 200-member team or a 150-member team is dramatically different.
Yes.
Remote and or hybrid is the future. Many organizations are falling employees back, but I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to COVID. They will soon
Right.
discover that productivity can be as high if you have remote or hybrid. Now, we are, as human beings, social creatures. I think hybrid is a better, best of both the worlds. Some people have a contrarian point of view, and I respect that if you are always remote, suddenly relocating yourself back into office for one day disturbs productivity. So we can discuss that at a later date. I think remote is the future. Remote requires more seasoned professionals who can self-supervise themselves, because beyond a point, how much can you remote? If you have an insecure boss, then remote work becomes very difficult, because your remote boss will micromanage you.
Yeah.
So that becomes a challenge, significant challenge. And it is up to the CEO of the company to create a trust surplus in the company, because if you operate from a trust deficit with your direct subordinates, they will cascade it down the chain. And if everybody in a remote company operates from a trust deficit, that I don't trust you enough, what are you doing? Let me check up. Are you on your desk at 9 o'clock in the morning? Should I put a camera?
Right.
Remote's not going to work. Remote should be almost like you're innocent until proven guilty. You're doing your work until I can prove that you're not doing your work. And if the organization feels the level of trust coming right from the CEO down, I think it can work very well. And there are obviously many financial advantages, cost advantages to operating remote.
I think it's entirely about how secure the management feels inside.
Yeah.
Like you're comfortable if your employees are not in front of you and you believe that they are still working, it's great. A lot of people think that if they are not in front of me, they might not be working. So
Absolutely. I mean, this is for the reason why companies like Amazon are trying to bring employees back. There must be some reason for it, right? They did a hybrid, and now from, in 2025, they want everybody back. There must be some reason for it. It's got to do with the culture. Amazon's culture is not a trusting culture.
Yes.
And there are many companies, and could be wrong, but I think Airbnb is 100% remote forever, and they've decided to remain. So it's a culture issue.
Right.
Cultures get driven by the founders and CEO. So that's where the onus lies.
And the trust part, just adding to that, I think I was reading this about Cred. They had a industry average attrition rate, but they were not okay with it. So what they did was the goodies and the laptops that developers used to get after joining, they used to send this to the employees before their joining. And they were like, यार 3 लाख का laptop भेज दिया मुझे पहले ही. And their joining rates improved massively after that.
That's interesting. That's impressive. But I would caution, these are gimmicks. I'll tell you why. This is my point of view.
Yeah.
If you remember, companies like Google started, you can have nap stations in office, free lunches, all that jazz, and yet they laid off tons of people.
Yes.
So they went into a trust deficit that at the slightest drop of productivity, Google and many tech firms, Microsoft laid off tens of thousands, despite having all these fancy things in the office.
And despite billions of dollars in profits.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars in profit. They were not hurting, but they just wanted to be more profitable.
Correct.
So all the investment you made in those fancy cafeterias is gone down the tube. Because people don't want to come to office for fancy lunches. They want to be appreciated. They want their work to be rewarded. They want to feel they contributed to something worthy. And if you don't have all of that, the rest is, it's just a cost.
Since you brought that up, what are the key things that makes an employee stick to a company?
First, okay, it kind of depends at where that employee is in his journey or her journey. Initially, an employee will stick if it's a solid brand, because they associate with the brand of the company.
Okay.
So you need to be either a market leader in your company or bubbling under or being an underdog. A lot of people will want to work an underdog who's taking on the market leader. So there is some sense of identification there. Mid-level, they start looking for meaning.
Yes.
If you come from 8 to late every single day, am I adding meaning to my life? And that's why you have the so-called midlife crisis that many of us go through, self-included, right? That's why I pivoted into being a job search strategist and a career coach.
Yeah.
And I think as you grow even older, then you look at how can I give back? So those are the 3 phases of a job seeker or a corporate professional's evolution in the corporate sector.
Got it.
What are the first 2-3 things a hiring manager will look into your resume?
I think there's only one thing actually. If you can crack that, you've got the job, which is what have you achieved? What have you achieved? You could have a 4-page resume filled with all responsibilities. And a responsibility is not an indicator of what you've achieved.
Yeah.
I see tons of resumes where you have bullet point after bullet point after bullet point after bullet point of responsibilities. I was responsible for new product launches. I managed cross-functional teams. I led, the Tamil Nadu, a depot in Tamil Nadu, for example. Good for you. You did all of that, but what came out of it? I haven't seen anything. So I'm not able to assess you as an achiever. Achievements are a proxy that you can do something in the next organization also. It's an indicator. The only thing the HR manager wants to see is don't show me 10 irresponsibilities, show me 3 achievements. Show me what you've done.
Yeah.
And those achievements have to be relevant for the role you're applying for. That's what the resume is supposed to do, nothing else.
Should you send a different resume to every job role you apply for, customized for them, or a basic template would work?
Basic templates don't work because applicant tracking systems are looking for some level of relevance. You could do it through keyword match, or you apply for the right kind of jobs where your skill set is relevant for that role. So templates don't work, strategy in the template works, and relevance is paramount.
Let's say I made a basic resume, I've written all my achievements. Now, how do I customize it for a job that I want to apply for?
You do that by joining my program, where I teach you step by step how to do it.
Got it.
I think I came across one of your ad, I think that we only created, which is...
He did not create it. It was Vikram.
it was Vikram's idea. Wow.
Yeah, it's running that ad. Is it?
The iceberg ad, where I think the reference is that at a mid-senior or a senior level, most of the jobs are not out there in the public and they're hidden. So can you just expand a bit more on that topic?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. There's a lot of misconceptions about the hidden job market. And when we talk about it, people say, how can jobs be hidden? Why would a company want to hide a job?
Yeah.
Right. And I see so many jobs on LinkedIn or Naukri or Times Job or Monster. So where are the hidden jobs? I don't believe it. That's wrong. It's not in the company's interests to place the best jobs out in the job portals because they get too many applications and it's difficult to separate the best from the rest. That's point number 1. Second is companies for very mission critical, high paying jobs want people who have come in through referrals, somebody who's been recommended.
Right.
Because as human beings, when there's something at high stakes, like a high stake job where you're being paid 50 lakhs, 60 lakhs, 1 crore, 1.5 crore and above, you want somebody who's you're reassured that the person can deliver. So you will always get a person through a referral wherever possible. You're not likely to hire someone on a 1 crore salary from a job portal. It's very unlikely to happen. Job portals have a place, but that's at the entry level. For senior levels, you need to tap into this hidden job market. Now, what is the hidden job market? The hidden job market basically is all jobs which do not get advertised on job portals and company career sites. And there are many more of them. It's like an iceberg. If you were to visualize an iceberg, up to 20% of jobs get advertised online at the junior and middle management level. The rest are filled up through networking. And the higher you go up the corporate ladder, the more jobs remain hidden in the job market. And they're filled up through networking, connecting with the right talent acquisition managers, hiring managers, getting social proof from your former bosses and colleagues that you are a credible resource. All of that makes a lot of difference. So I had, for example, a while back, a student of mine. Her story was that she was in outbound IT sales in Chennai. And she was trying to find a job, and she had lost a job, I think, in March of 2024. So she had no job, okay? And she was trying very, very desperately. And she decided to take my program and decided not to apply online. So she did 2 very interesting things. One is she reached out and networked with the right HR managers across her niche globally. And one of them networked back with her and was willing to give her and set up a new role for her within a 2-month period. And that only happened through networking. The other was that this was really interesting and this really requires guts. She went down to her office, the reception area where you have the list of all the companies in the office. in the building, and she made a list of all of them. Then she went on LinkedIn and looked at who's the head of HR there. Then she started networking with all of them. And she did not give up until they said, please stop and come and meet us. Why are you bugging us? She did not stop. And one person said, I've never seen an approach like this. Have a chat with me, have a cup of coffee. I'll see if I can recommend you to somebody. By the end of the cup of coffee, he offered her a job. It's the way she was thinking about networking.
Right.
So even at a junior level like her, she was pretty junior. She had about 5 years of experience, but a very different approach to job search. She said, I don't have a job. If I compete online with other people who have jobs, why would they even look at me? And she was right.
Correct.
And there have been hundreds and thousands of people who have lost their jobs recently.
Yeah.
If let's say I'm working in a MNC or maybe a startup, I always have an innate fear that I might be the next, right? So what are the 2-3 things I have to keep in mind so that my name does not come in that email? Second, if someone has been recently laid off and is listening to this, what message do you want to share with them?
I think the first thing is be employable and don't seek employment. Everybody should assume that at some point of time you can lose your job today. No job is bulletproof. What is bulletproof is your ability to find the next job very quickly by building skills, by building relevance, by keeping yourself ahead of the curve. You have seen how AI is changing the field rapidly in the corporate sector. Everybody needs to be on top of things. So that's number one. If you have been laid off, it's not the end of the world. So there are 2 reasons for being laid off. One is for no fault of yours. Maybe some finance director in Europe decides we don't want to operate in India. India office done. Thank you very much. Not your fault. If you have built your credibility and built your performance in the industry and people know you, you'll find a job very soon. If you've been laid off because of financial fraud, sexual harassment, or productivity issues and are put on a PIP, then it's very hard to recover from any of them. Then you need to sort of move into some other kind of line entirely, because companies will always do a back check on you, especially when you have a career gap, because you might say that the company laid me off because they were downsizing, but how do I know that? HR managers are always skeptical. So they actually employ third-party agencies to do back checks on you.
Right.
And that's very important because the company is protecting themselves, their interests. So if you're open to scrutiny, if you have been a good performer, if you're relevant, you have nothing to worry about, but be prepared that this can happen to anyone, which is why employability is more important than employment. And stay upskilled. And if you have been laid off, relax. Upskill yourself in your domain and then learn how to package that and come back, with your guns blazing into the job market, because it's not a question of just applying for jobs. That does not work.
Moving to the last question, how important it is to have a career coach in India right now? Because a lot of people don't even know the concept of having a career coach, or they don't even know they can have a career coach.
We invest a lot as Indians and for the right reasons, in things like we invest in a house, in a vehicle, we invest in children's education, we invest in expensive marriages, etc., etc. And that's fine. There's a time and place for everything. But we don't invest enough in ourselves. This is one area in our culture where I wish people would invest in their self-growth and self-learning. Not just in job search, but in various aspects where we may not be very strong. The coaching culture is much stronger in North America because people are willing to invest in themselves. So the first thing is, please invest in yourself for growth, because you cannot go to the next level unless you know the next level exists and you know how to reach that next level in any part of your life. The second is, in today's world where people are relying very heavily on ChatGPT to solve all their problems, you still need a coach. You need a blueprint, because beyond tools and tactics which have their place, ChatGPT is important, AI is important, but it will keep evolving. But an AI coach can't take the place of a real coach who's seen life like you, who's just a few steps ahead of you and can turn back and say, I can help you navigate this.
Right.
So I think coaching and job search, coaching is very important. At the end of the day, all of us spend, let's say, about 10 hours a day working. If you include commuting and all of that, it's a significant part of your life. If you work 5 days a week or 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, you're doing a 60-hour work week. So shouldn't you be in the best place which leverages your skills and makes you happy rather than sad. I am happy to say that quite a few people now are beginning to understand the need for coaching, the need for growing. But that resistance of, if I invest, what do I get back in return? They're looking for an immediate fix. Okay, that may not happen because coaching helps you move to the next level over a short period of time. Could be a couple of months, could be a couple of years. But that realization is now dawning even in India, and people are beginning to invest in their coaching.
Thank you. And if anyone is looking for a career coach, I don't know anyone better than Vikram. I've worked with him very closely for last 2 years, and I've realized how diligent he is, how results obsessed he is, and how you can take you to the next level. So if you want to invest in your growth, your job search strategies, if you're looking for a career coach, I would highly, highly recommend Vikram for it. Now, moving to the last part of this podcast, I just want to thank everyone who watched it till here. Prakhar, had envisioned this for a lot of time,
Yes.
starting a podcast, and this is the first episode, and it's done, and feels great that way. And if
Yeah.
you throw in some feedback, some positive comments, some things that we can work on, we'll definitely try to improve in the next few episodes. And also, do tell us what kind of guests you want so that we can arrange for them. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, Vikram. I think this is going to be super insightful for anyone who has watched this till now.
Prakhar, Amritanshu, thank you guys so much for having me on your first debut show. It's a privilege and always a great fun to work with both of you. And to all the job seekers, start thinking like a problem solver.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching.
That's it.